met by Zoom because Nick was working for a living or whatever.
Unfortunately.
Which is
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. And, but we're looking forward to when he can join us. Anyone else that would be interested in doing some of this CRE work, and especially if you've been trained for this, we need that voice. We don't want to just be telling CREs. We also want to be listening to them about things. So we've kind of gone over that first part. One thing we don't need to decide today, but to think about is how, as we go forward, what is it, we want to do? What do we expect CPM to do in terms of training people? Do we want, should they continue doing what they're doing to train people, or to offer even like continuing ed for people who have already been trained and might want additional training or training in something else? Do we want to leave that with them, or do we want people like Elizabeth to help train if we have specific situations where we need to plug people in? I think a lot of that depends on, so I think CPM is looking at nothing more than annual kinds of events. So if we need to plug things in between, we can do that. I think it will be important for us, some of us, to have conversation with CPM as we go forward, and these are our expectations and what we would like from them as well. But I'd like you to look at that second section because we do have ruling elders who will have been trained that we need to examine. And these were some questions that we came up with as a subcommittee. What do you think of them, and are there others you'd like to see? So part of this will be based on the fact that some of us are going to be attending the training. And so we'll actually hear and see what it is they've been learning. And so, we don't want to ask questions on something that wasn't covered. It's not our point to make them feel bad about what they don't know. So, but to find out what they do know. So, and I'll say a little bit more about how the training is going to go, but we would like to see a sermon or an outline of a sermon ahead of time for us to read over. What will your sermon say? How do you prepare? How do you prepare when you're preaching? How do you envision preparing if you're not already doing it? As you put together a worship service, or you officiate at communion or do baptism. So part of this, they're going to be practicing in their training. So they'll have at least some idea about how that will go. We would like them to talk about their personal faith, which seems to me, this is my comment, kind of a very broad category. As you ask it, you may want to focus it a little bit more. Is there a particular time or what in your background led you to wanting to do this kind of ministry? I know CREs that feel called to do that work. Not called to go to seminary, but called to be an elder and to be about this particular work. So as you examine them, look for Reformed theology, the authority of Scripture in their life, in the work that they do. Do they talk about the sovereignty of God? Maybe not in those words, but is that idea presented? Salvation by grace. And Presbyterian aspects of it as well. Even if they aren't going to be asked to moderate a session, do they have a working knowledge of the Book of Order, for instance, about preaching? You can give an example and say, an elder comes up to you and says, I want you to preach on this topic. And you say, well, I'll consider that, but, that's up to me to choose what it is I preach on, led by the Spirit. So, those are the kinds of things they need to know. Or, you've done communion at a church and someone comes up to you and says, I'm an elder here and I'm going to take it to so-and-so. Is that okay? Mm. No, it's not okay. Mm. So anyway, and so I've graded ordination exams. One thing you have to remember is these are people who have just gone through the training, and really where you learn things is boots on the ground. So they're not going to be the people they're going to be in a couple of months after they've preached a few times or done communion. So it's not that they don't have to, that they have to get all the answers right, but they have to have kind of a working knowledge and how do they approach things. You know, in grading ORD exams, you look at can they get along with, you know, when they talk about certain situations, are they being pastoral to a particular person in the congregation who asks a really stupid question or a question that's a definite no-no, because how they respond to that is how they're going to work with the people in the churches. And that's part of what you look for. You know, if you're on committee on preparation, how a candidate deals with you, you're the church, is how they're going to deal with the church when they get out there. So, you know, you kind of look for those kinds of things as well. You can ask, what are you planning to do with your training? So here's where we find out. Do you feel comfortable moderating a session? You know, what is it you plan to do with your training? And then I think we could also add to that, what other training would you like to have? So even if they're done with this annual kind of training, are there things we can present in between times to help them brush up, or something they felt like didn't get covered quite enough? So what is your response to these questions? And they, like I said, they don't have to be asked in any particular order.
Are these, excuse me.
Go ahead.
You ready?
Yeah.
This class coming up, these are questions that might be asked of them after they finish the class. Will
Right.
each of these people be given a book of order?
Well, they all have access to the Book of Order.
They-
They're given a Book of Common Worship. I don't think they're given a Book of Order.
It's a good point, Rick.
I think it would be
Okay.
great.
We could hand that over, and then they would be
There's
so
just
grateful.
Most
Yeah.
recent edition.
Yeah.
It's not that expensive.
Well, it's online. Anybody, you can download it for free.
Yeah, well, I'm a hands-on person. I do download, but
Yeah,
I like
I get that.
the book.
Yeah.
I think they're nice to have.
Okay, Book of Order.
Do these folks, for this class, most of them come from churches who have a pastor installed?
No.
Okay.
So, well, I have to look. I don't remember the list of class people. But
I guess what I'm thinking, I would hope that those folks going through this and these questions are things that they have experienced and have watched visiting pastors or pastors do over the years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how does the person who's been at our church, how does he or she do communion?
Mm-hmm.
What have I? You pick up a lot from people. A lot of who I am is when I was an associate minister working with a guy who was just a prince of a gentleman for 7 years. So I mean, these people are going to be doing these things. If they have somebody they've been watching, that's a great teacher right
Yeah,
there.
it is.
And another thing I would add to this, Janet, I think is so important for these folks, is to know you're here with friends.
What?
You're here with friends. You know, to say to these folks, students, whatever they're going to be called, you know, you're here with friends. You're going to be learning together. There's going to be people leading you. But most importantly, you're here with friends who are to help each other, not to pick at you.
Right. I think that would
Yeah.
certainly be a good way to introduce.
When I did the
and begin.
sacraments piece of this with the first class, I think Ernie was in that class, first class. I wanted to know as we work through this together, there are different ways, different traditions of doing it, but there's a pattern that we do. But we're here with friends to help each other out.
So one thing I'd like to do next week when they do meet is to give them a handout that will give them kind of the process of how to go forward, and talk to them. I'll have some time during the event to talk with them about what our expectations are going forward. And if you're comfortable, I'll just kind of give them this outline for questions they might be asked in the examination. And that way they can kind of say it may not be all of these, it may be something different, but this is generally what we're going to talk to you about. Did you have something?
Yeah,
Hazel?
is there like a rubric? So if we're gonna ask for a sermon or outline for critique,
Mm-hmm.
do they know how we're going to assess it beforehand in the form of a rubric? I think that often is really helpful, especially in the learning process.
Okay.
And then, something that we do in the Commission on Ministry and the Disciples, which functions sort of like the committee for the preparation for ministry, I think,
Mhm.
is, we have our candidates do a self-assessment for the essential competencies of ministry.
Mhm.
And I wonder if there is a list, where candidates could do a self-assessment and reflection on the essential competencies to be a ruling elder, on this training.
Okay.
I think that could help open the door for conversation, when we talk about their personal faith, practice of faith, understanding of theology.
Mhm.
But
Say again what you called that?
a self-assessment for the
self-assessment.
competencies of ministry.
Okay.
I do think the language is important. I almost think submit a sermon for discussion rather than critique, because to me, part of the
Okay.
question is, what do you think a sermon is? You know, what do
Okay.
you think makes it worth, in a worship setting, listening to what this person has to, listening to what the preacher has to say?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But another way to approach it certainly would be to say, these are the things which a good sermon has, can you do this?
Yeah.
But,
And again, I'll be interested to see what exactly they're told about that.
right.
Yeah. So.
Also, are the people in this training people who have started to sense that they have a call to this sort of ministry and they're going to check it out? Or are they people who in their communities, they're like, we think you're gonna be a ruling elder, go to this training so you can be a ruling elder? Like, where in the discernment process are these?
So yes.
Everywhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably. So there are people who simply want to help out at their church or around the presbytery
Okay.
as elders, but they are all elders already. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
not a question.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
they are ruling elders, or they can't participate.
Okay.
That's correct, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So this
That's right.
training is for more like the practical aspects of
Right.
okay.
Right. And why they want to be leaders in this particular way
Okay, yeah.
around the presbytery. So. Yeah, Nick.
Where was it? Sorry, I had the question, then I lost it. Talk about your personal faith on 2C.
Mm-hmm.
Has, kind of related to that, has there been discussion of maybe having them submit a statement of faith, or is that already part of what
It's
we
in
do?
the application.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that comes before they even go to training?
Yeah,
Right.
But I don't know how those applications are evaluated. I know somebody who just put down, if it's in the Apostles' Creed, I believe it. That's not super personal.
Yeah.
But-
So you can ask about that. Could you elaborate on that at least?
Good enough
Sure,
for Jesus,
sure.
is good enough for me.
Yeah, and we do have access to those applications, so when we examine people, we will be able to share those with people.
So maybe we just ask if they would make any modifications since the training to their statement of faith.
There you go. That would be a good question. So, anything else about the particular? I am cognizant of the time, so I think just be looking at part 3, the other. What can we offer to help? Should we turn someone down after their examination? In CPM, if you do that with the candidate or you say you're not ready to move on, you also have ways to say you need more study in this, you could use that. So these are just things to be thinking about. How would we do that? How will we provide the mentorship and continuing ed they might need? What other support would they need? And how would we provide training for individual congregations? So anyway, just some other, because we never settle anything for good. We have to always have more questions at the end. Anything else before we move on? I just want you to take a real quick look at the agenda for next weekend. So it lists the times and who's going to be doing what. If there are times that you can be there, and it's going to be here at the Hilton Garden Inn in Norman. I don't know where that is.
Probably up off 24th.
Is that the one we've used all the time?
I don't know.
700 Copperfield Drive.
Yeah, anyway, we had the address. If you are able to attend, that would be helpful. But one thing they have asked everybody to do, I don't know if you're familiar with Theo Academy. It's, sometimes people use it for
Officer.
officer training, and I was thinking confirmation classes. So there's a whole list of videos about different topics. And they have asked them to look at particular Theo Academy videos. You are welcome to look at those. There's no cost to it, and you just have to find them. If you would like to do some of that, I can actually send you the agenda, so all you have to do is click on the link to look at things. But here, these are the topics that they'll be doing, and when they'll be doing them. And we do have permission, and we are invited to come as COM to any of that. I plan to be at most of it. Are you going to be there, Charlie? And I know Elizabeth's thinking about it, but she lives here in town, so. Yeah. But that will just gives you an idea, and I'll be sure to, I'll just go ahead and send this out because I need to send it to Mary Ellen and Dolores and Mike and Stacy anyway. But that's what they're going to be doing. So at the end of this time, they're actually going to work on writing a sermon, which I think they've also done. But they're doing it in a group so that they can ask questions. There will be people around if they need help with things. And then what they're going to do is there are 4 churches. Where did I write that down? Oh, it's on your agenda. No, it's not. I lied about that.
It's Sulphur, Falls Valley, Covenant, and
Memorial here.
Memorial.
So on January 26th, they'll be in teams of 3, I think, 3 or 4, and they're going to be at one of, what they'll do the week ahead is plan the worship service with the pastor, if there is one, and then they will come, I don't want to say present, but they will come lead worship. And each person will have at least, my understanding is each person will get to at least preach a short sermon on that time. But they'll together divide up the worship service, they'll write liturgy, they'll pick hymns, everything that you need to do to plan that with the help. So each of those churches has a pastor who can help with that. And then that Sunday they'll be doing that. I think it would be important for us, we can't all be at a church, but if you can, that'd be great. But several of them are online. So what we'll do is let you know who's going to be where, and if you're part of the examination of that person, I think it would be helpful just to see how they do.
That's on the 26th.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
I can go to Sulphur.
That would be good. And, or if, if we just, if you are able to go to one, but that's not somebody that you're going to examine, then, just let us know how people do or whatever. So, I know I have that here somewhere. Don't know where now.
It's under 3E
Thank you. Which 3E?
on the agenda.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, there it is. I knew I wrote it somewhere. Okay, so, and they call that, CPM calls this their capstone project, and that'll happen on the 26th. After that happens, then it will be our turn to examine them. We'll need to, not everybody has to do that if you don't feel comfortable, but let me know if that's something you're willing to do. and we'll set up times to do that. We have these people who are going through the training, and the other person we have is Melissa Gill. You may know her because she's served in Presbytery.
Just Gil.
Oh, really?
And she's lives here in Norman, and she went through the program at Austin Seminary and finished during COVID. And so everything got kind of dropped. So she is trained. She would also like to be examined and used around the Presbytery. And we'll have to find out from her in what particular ways. But anyway, that's why it says to examine those completing training plus Melissa. So, any questions or comments about
Are you
that?
going to let us know a date for that examination?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to figure that out.
Okay, all right.
So that's a good question, though. So would you rather, like, break up into smaller groups and figure it out on your own? Would it help to have a Sunday afternoon where we do everybody at once?
How many are we talking about?
There are 11
11.
now on the list.
Yeah. So that would be 12 with Melissa.
Well, that's a lot of people to examine.
Yeah, and I'm thinking too, I mean, geographically, they're kind of spread out, so I think we may want to look at that, you know, kind of do the lot in people at a particular time.
Needs to be done before Presbytery.
Well, before they start doing anything, and you know, they're going to be wanting to do things, that's why they're in the training, so. If we can get it done before our meeting on the 4th of February, that would be great. But I think we're just going to have to figure out how that's going to work. Or at least have some of them done. And so if something comes to you in a dream, let me know how to do this. Otherwise, we'll
I would
just...
think you just break it up and have 3
Mhm.
to do the examination and spread it out on time frames that fit the agenda of the people you're examining.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. So that's what we'll shoot for. We'll see what happens. Okay. I do want to take a little bit of time to go through the notebook. It's 1 o'clock now, and this notebook is quite a monster. So one thing I want to say is, where did here we go. So I just want to go through it section by section. I think there's a lot of material in here. I mean, I want to make this user-friendly. So I think there's a lot of material. It's okay for you to see it, but it's not really necessary to what you're doing, and you may never look at it. How many who have been on COM before have read this cover to cover?
Most of it.
What a
But-
brown noser.
But I want you to look at this.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's been updates.
No, there hasn't. So part of it,
Horribly antiquated.
yeah. So I've been working on this with Sue, and it didn't get finished because of the snow. But what she'll do is update all of the information about the committee and minimum compensation for pastors, everything that changes. She will update and get to everyone so that we can put that. There'll be a new new table of contents from the first, so the first page. So, and part of what we're going to give you are just links to what you can find online. We're going to try to save a few trees here. So, section number 2, which is our manual from the Presbytery, that is online. I mean, you can have this one. It hasn't really been updated for a while, and part of that's because we're not sure what we're doing as we go to the future. But rather than just having it all in a notebook, you're welcome to keep this, but we're just going to have the link listed from the Presbytery so that we don't have to, if you need things, it's there for you. Section 3 is going to be eliminated altogether because we're not going to, it's all right for you to read the advisory opinions of the General Assembly about COM things, but again, have you read this, Rick?
It's been a while since I did this section. I stayed
See.
with section 4 and 5 mostly.
See if Rick hasn't read it. No, I bet no one's read it. So,
Hey, I'm retired.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, but in the place of that, we'll have a section for you to put your minutes from meetings, if you want that. Some of you prefer to do everything online or have folders on your computer, and that's fine. I did bring with me some hole punched paper. I'm going to pass it around, and if you're like me and Rick, and you like to have copies of things you can look at. I find I skim and scan when I do things on my computer, that I miss things that way. So take some paper home with you and print it out and put it in your notebook, because it'll have the holes punched.
You sure this is okay?
Well, don't take the whole thing. You have to share.
Share.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a soup.
You are quite a leader. Never had anybody offer me paper.
Okay.
Thinking ahead.
So that will be the new section 3. Section 4, the COM handbook, this is the latest one, 2011, 2013. They have not updated it. But that will be gone. It'll just be the link to where you can find it online. And if you're like me, when you get online, you search for a word and you keep hitting that until you find what it is you're looking for when you get online. So.
What are you suggesting as far as, the book I've got at the office, it's just there for research. The stuff that we actually participate, like all AACs, I had one AC that lasted 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
There's not room for all that. So what do you suggest that we do there? Because I think that we need, in that particular case, there was a lot of money involved. We needed to make sure that we had all
The
the
information.
information.
Yeah. So most things like that, once you're done, and copies are in the presbytery office, right? So if you want to just shred those, especially if there are names of people, yeah. So I would just shred those, or you don't have to keep those for forever, unless you like to read them late at night. And okay.
I read other things at night.
So, yeah, so all of this stuff, if you don't want it, just take it out of your notebook. It'll be a lot lighter. And like I said, well, there'll be a copy of it in the presbytery office if you really need to see something, but there'll also be links. So, Section 4, again, will be the link. Section 5, we're continuing to review. So some of these sections, if it's something, I mean, again, this is your notebook, and you can read anything that's in it. If you find it helpful, that's great. I have a feeling that most of Section 5 is going to disappear.
I might just footnote, Joseph Small has a piece on ordination that's at the beginning of chapter, or section 5. And there's 2 or 3 other pieces that Joseph Small has in there. They're excellent reading, excellent.
Yeah.
And this particular one on 5 is on ordination.
Okay, Section 6 is the minimum salary, and that's, Sue will update that. This is Section 6. I kind of took small notes. Oh, salary reports. So aren't we the ones that set or recommend the minimum?
It's 85% of median. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
Unless
which
it's
is
approval.
which is set by the Board of Pensions. So.
I think it, if I'm remembering correctly, last time I checked, it's 57, maybe, somewhere around there.
53,680 in 2024. So I don't know what it is. I don't know that it's been set for
It's a little lower than I thought. It was
2025.
around 55.
Yeah. Anyway, like I said, Sue updates that and she'll get that to us And some of that is helpful if you're working with a congregation that's calling somebody. But for most of us, it's just a lot of paper. So, anyway. Section 7 is the liaison stuff, and right now, we're leaving that for now. We've looked at a couple of sections in that, but you know, some of these guidelines are pretty good in terms of questions to ask or things like that, but it's also a pretty thick section for the work that we do. So that's to be determined. We're going to remove section 8, which is the formula of agreement from, what was that, 2005? I don't remember. It's been a while.
This is 1997.
Oh, no.
Four
Really?
churches.
Oh,
of
okay.
Reformation heritage.
I mean, I remember that worship service where we
Yeah,
had everybody. Yeah, well, it's been 27
goes back,
years,
doesn't
so, yeah. But that does show you that we do have this agreement between the ELCA, the PCUSA, the Reformed Church in America, and United Church of Christ, so that we can exchange pastors easily with those.
Review it or vote on it again or anything, just out of curiosity?
No, it's done.
If they're etched in stone.
Yep. That's why we don't need to carry it around. This is a section 9 is about if you feel a calling to Christian education, and we're going to take that out. Again, the resources are there. They're online if you want those, but we don't deal with a lot of Christian educators these days, so it's just extra weight. And section 10 is going to be our new section on CREs. 'Cause
Oh, right.
they get their own section now, so that we can remember what we said. But it is partially that already, but we'll continue to update that. So feel free, and I'll send this out in the minutes. Feel free to get rid of the sections that we're taking out, and I'll tell you which ones those are again. You know, keep them, use them to keep warm this winter. I don't know what you want to do with them. Start making paper dolls. You can do all kinds of things.
Paper airplanes.
But they won't be part of the new
You ever
notebooks.
do that?
And so if you feel slighted, Jane, we can get you
to
copies of
get-
all of this.
Second church,
So.
we used to get it in the balcony
Okay.
and make paper airplanes out of the bullet.
Questions or comments about that? Like I said, this is a work in progress. And like the Book of
We
Order,
did.
if we take things out and then find out we really need those, we'll put them back in. That's what the binder part's all about. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about liaison. Now that Christmas and Advent are over, you can be thinking about making connections with your churches that you've been assigned to be a liaison. Make a visit to a session meeting, just say hello. You can look up the visits in the liaison section. If you'd like to do a more formal, what are those called? Ministry somethings. They're not triennial visits, they're ministry and something questions. But be looking for opportunities to just connect with them, to let them know Presbytery knows they're out there, that we're listening. Bring back any issues they have, any resourcing they need. Don't make any big promises, but just say, you know, that's something we can work on, and we certainly will give it our attention. Try to be aware of what pastoral needs they have. If they don't have a pastor and their members come to the hospital here in the cities, how can we connect and make sure they get visited? Um, you know, are they getting communion on a regular basis? How are they having trouble finding pulpit supply? Are they having trouble paying the mileage for pulpit supply? You know, what are the issues that they're really struggling with? And then find the things that you can celebrate with them. What are the things that are going well? What are the ways you're reaching out? I mean, you may not have kids in your Sunday school class, but you have an after-school program. Those are your kids, and you know those. Be sure to celebrate those kinds of things with them.
May I ask a question?
Mhm.
As a liaison, when we visit, say when I visit with Kathy Luke, I went up, I think in November, just to worship with them and introduced myself to her in person. Of course, I met her on the Zoom meeting when we talked to her and examined her. But when I go as a liaison to visit her, I go by myself. But if I'm doing a triennial visit, then we go in twos.
Yes.
And is it still teaching elder, ruling elder, man, woman? Can it be two men? Can it be two women? Or do we get sticky wicket on that kind of stuff still, or does it matter?
I don't think it matters. I think the important thing is having two pairs of ears.
Yeah, somebody to write, take notes.
Yeah,
to
and
ask
someone to
questions.
take notes and
Right,
someone to
but
kind of
the
lead the
liaison visit can
discussion.
be just me going and having lunch with Kathy and.
If to a
Yeah.
minister, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I think those one-on-ones, otherwise you kind of feel
Sure.
like,
They've got a new program starting there in this month, and she said, let me get it started and then come up and we'll
yeah.
have a conversation.
Yeah, so if your church does have a minister, make sure you connect with them as well
Yeah.
as going to a session meeting. But when you
Okay.
do visit the session, it is better to go with somebody,
Yeah.
ask somebody to go with you. So, if at all possible. And it doesn't have to be someone on the committee. You know, if you know someone, another elder from your church, like if you live in Altus and you know, no one else is close by, you know, ask someone from your church to go with you. You know,
You are supposed to contact the churches before you go, right?
right, right. So, and it will depend on the church. You may go at a regular session meeting. They may want to meet, it may be budget time, so they want to meet with you separately. And, you know, it should be 45 minutes to an hour. Depends. Won't be real long. But anyway, start thinking about that. Hopefully we're getting out of winter and getting into spring. Before tornado season, we'll make some visits. So, any questions about that? As I said, we'll do more on the materials in the notebook before that. So. The next item is approval of the minutes from December 3rd. Those were sent out to you by email, and I think I'm going to do that from now on, to have the draft sent out fairly soon. Otherwise, I forget what we talked about if I don't get it soon, so.
I move approval of the minutes of December 3rd.
Okay. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. We've already done the notebook. Do we have anyone that would like to be clerk of COM? I just want to say they don't have to make as many liaison visits if you,
Oh, clerk. Oh, gosh.
anyway,
I think you ought to draft Charlotte
to come back and do that?
as clerk.
She's so diligent.
She's a dandy.
She's a busy one.
I'll ask. That's come up twice now, so third time is when she appears, right? What, we say her name 3 times? Okay.
Click your heels.
Charlie, do you have anything else to report?
No report?
Okay. Tracy had to have a funeral today, but she didn't have anything that I know of. We have a request from Midwest City's First Presbyterian Church to waive the G20404, allowing Frank Nardi and Douglas Wilson to serve 3-year terms again. And I'll just read you her letter. Both have already served 2 consecutive terms and graciously agreed to continue to serve. Sharon has had a hard time getting people to serve on the session. Our congregation is aging with many having health issues, disability, mobility issues, and other challenges. We average approximately 25 on Sunday, with several being longtime regulars, but for whatever reason do not wish to become members, and that makes them ineligible to be on the session. On our congregational meeting in October, both Mr. Nardi and Wilson were nominated and approved pending presbytery approval. There were no nominations from the floor, and the vote carried. In addition, Mr. Roger Epperly was serving as a ruling elder in the class of 2026, but his health is deteriorating and he resigned, unable to fulfill the rest of his term, and they couldn't find anyone to finish that out. So both the session and the congregation have voted to reduce the number of ruling elders from 6 to 5, since they have trouble finding, and they may want to do even less than that for a congregation of that size. Anyway, they've already taken that action and are simply asking us to waive the book of order requirement for them.
I move approval.
A couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
It says 6 including the moderator. Is it including the clerk? Or is it 5 plus? Is it still Bill Carr doing moderator?
Yes,
Carr.
Bill Carr is the moderator.
Is he the 6th?
No,
Okay.
because he's not installed in that church.
Right.
He's
I
not
guess I'm
really
just-
a member of the session.
I
It may
think,
not matter. I'm confused on the wording. a little
I think
bit.
it should say the session has 5 members plus the moderator.
Oh, 6, I see what you're saying, 6 including the moderator. Yeah, there'll be a 5-member
Okay.
session and a moderator. So we'll just make the recommendation that be waived. We won't have that confusing vocabulary in there. Okay. Any more questions or comments? All in favor say yes.
Yes?
Any opposed say no. Motion carries. Remember that the Seminole Tallahassee Church is not meeting regularly, but at some point we will need a moderator for them. We still have 3 liaison openings. And that brings us to the liaison reports. For churches with active PNCs or APNCs, actually I don't think First Norman committee is, is not active yet, but anything more to hear about Ada?
Ada's in the process of getting their report together, start looking for a preacher.
Okay,
They have a timetable, Russell?
They should have their report ready by the 26th of January. That's what they were looking at.
Super.
and have they elected their search committee yet, or is that still to do?
They're
Okay.
waiting on this to get their mission statement in and things like that, and then they'll see about nominating, electing a
Okay,
PNC.
okay. First Ardmore, I'm the liaison, and Mary Helen said, we'll wait till after Christmas, so. haven't talked
I
about
would
that.
make a recommendation. I mean, I'm there. I have no connection with the church. I live there. But I would make a recommendation that we have a group, small group, meet with them to find out, why aren't you actively looking? I thought it was a mistake to hire a headhunter. That's not the Presbyterian way, but I didn't have a vote on that. But I think we have a wonderful system, and to go, 4 or 5 years now with an interim?
It's been more than
More than
3.
3 years. Mary Ellen's there, done a good job. I think they've given her a raise for 3 days a week. But a church needs to have a pastor engaged in activity in the community. And I would definitely want to find out, why aren't you meeting now? So I would make that recommendation, that we, at least on our next meeting, come up with some kind of program where 2 or 3 people say, from this committee, we want to meet with the PNC at Ardmore.
Okay.
What can we do to help you get started? I mean, they paid, what, Charlie, $20,000 for a headhunter? And they came up with 2 candidates that aren't even Presbyterian.
They are, for all intents and purposes, dead in the water.
Yeah.
And it's,
And I'm not against somebody not being Presbyterian, but they didn't come up with anybody.
It's a
That's not
good-
Presbyterian.
It's a good church.
Yeah.
Um,
Meet me in the alley after.
Yeah. we're talking about-
I think it would not be a bad idea to meet with them. I suspect I should not be part of the smaller group because they
Mhm.
have real ill will toward me, but
Mhm.
maybe you and a couple of other unfamiliar folks to them.
Think they'd behave better if they don't know people?
There are no guarantees in life,
Okay.
but
Well, that sounds like something that everybody wants to volunteer
I
for,
know,
right?
that job sounds really fun.
Keep selling that, Charlie.
While we're talking, what seems to be the problem with Ardmore and getting a preacher?
I'll be perfectly honest with you, Russell, I don't think the PNC is representative of the congregation in the least.
Is it the same group that brought the person that decided not to come?
Yep, and they should have been disbanded following that and weren't. And it's led by somebody who doesn't like us to begin with, and most of the members of the PNC have the shallowest roots you could imagine in Presbyterian. They don't have Presbyterian roots, they're Baptist. So those people that they've floated before me, none of them have been acceptable. And they've made it clear they intend to continue to look for folks that they want, and they're itching for a fight. And going to the 20 grand a year headhunter, it doesn't seem to have solved their problem, but the headhunter group itself is led by somebody who took his congregation out of the denomination.
How many people on the PNC?
What is it, Rick? Maybe 5?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
I have tried to, they just don't like me at all. They don't return phone calls. I'm blamed for the fiasco of the candidate who came in, and they've made it very clear they have no intention of working with me.
Okay. More to come, I guess. Stay tuned. Edmund Santa Fe.
Excuse me, are we gonna,
Oh.
are you gonna form a committee or someone will volunteer, or how's that? To go meet with them, or what's the game plan?
Yeah, I think I'll work on appointing a committee.
Hmm.
See where we get. Edmund Santa Fe.
They have a candidate coming in this upcoming week. I don't have a feel for how that will go, we'll see. But they have received a number of inquiries, and they've had a very good roster of potential candidates. It's a church that's very attractive and has generated a lot of interest. And it's a very good PNC.
Okay. Shawnee United, we don't know much, and I meant to get a hold of. That would be another good reason to have Charlotte here.
I think Charlotte is liaison.
Yeah.
I was out there last Sunday, and they said they're getting very, very few candidates. They're very discouraged by the lack of interest.
Okay. All right. Under old business, I just kind of want to review, remember last time we voted on the recommendation from the AC that was working with Sulphur Salem and all that about transferring the property to, through trustees and all of that. I just want to say that I've been trying to make contact with Adele Hopper, a member there. And when I caught her, she was on her way to the airport to go to see her grandson in Germany for Christmas. So we haven't connected since then. I just want to make sure that she understands that if they wish to remain Presbyterian, we're happy to keep them as a church of our presbytery. When I talked with her briefly, she said, well, they hadn't really made up their minds yet. But mostly I just want to communicate to her that we are willing, if that would work for them. And because of the history of that congregation, there's not anything in the motion that we did that has anything to do with that.
I was gonna say, that's a little different than what we discussed and voted on last time.
Well,
We,
there was nothing about
Adele
disbanding.
Hopper and I have been very close, and Jessica Tiger of the Choctaw Nation and Durant have been very close. And Jessica has assured me that if our trustees here were to sign the property over to the trustees of the Salem Presbyterian Church, not individuals like Adele Hopper and
Right.
Williamson, but sign, there's no deed, but sign the property over, that Jessica would make sure that the Choctaw Nation would make sure that there would always be a Christian church. Because Adele said, you know, we're not ever going to be a Presbyterian church. We're not going to have elders. The guy preaching there now is doing a good job, but was a street minister, and I think he's had not a Baptist background, but he was ordained by some lady on the street in Oklahoma City. But he's doing a fine job. They meet on the second Sunday, I believe, of each month there.
And he's
And
also.
there's only a handful of them. I mean, not even a handful. So I thought we had decided, what we voted on, what went to council, was that we would let the property go to
Right.
to them.
Right, and that's not in question, what happened to the property. If they want to remain in relationship to the Indian Nations Presbytery, that we were open to that.
Okay.
There's nothing in the motion that talks about, we transfer the members to this or that church or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't anyway to a
Yeah,
Baptist church.
there's no
but-
members to do that with.
Yeah, but,
It's a beautiful building on a beautiful little piece of land. But I'm hoping that there have been people who approached me as I chaired this committee that said, Rick, we can make $5,000 to $10,000 an acre on 10 acres, even though there's a little cemetery on the corner. And I said, why do that to our Native Americans when it's their land?
right,
And it's cost us, if we wanted to go through the deed process and do all that, my lawyers that I've worked with said it's gonna cost the presbytery $3,000 to $5,000 just for the paperwork. So just kind of let them have the property, and the Choctaw Nation said they would help manage it.
right. And I think that's a great step, to have
Well, I'm hoping,
the nation take over that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay. Any other old business? New business?
I have a question on procedure and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Not being pushy, but I kind of sense there's an undercurrent at Westminster and First Lawton that we ought to be thinking about something down the road, so just kind of letting it happen, hopefully. With that in mind, I know one of the first questions comes up, let's assume those two congregations decided to get together. And they chose one or the other of the existing properties to be their church. What happens when you sell the other church? Does it stay with the new combined church, or does that come back to the presbytery?
That's a good question.
Well, that's up to the presbytery, but I think historically, the money goes to support ministry. So like if a congregation would sell a building and move somewhere, the money moves with them. I mean, we're not in the realty business. So I would think, my recommendation to presbytery would be they take that money with them for the continuing ministry of those congregations. But that's my opinion, so I can't speak for everybody.
I don't know.
I think it's a good question. The only thing I know about money going to the presbytery is when you sell, when a church closes.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I just kind of get a sense, because I've had a couple little comments about it, and I thought, I think this is where this is headed. And that's gonna be one of the questions. I think that's one of the first hurdles that these two entities are gonna have to get over is, ideally what you would do is sell both of them, go find you a new piece of property, build you a new building, and that's their church. Because if you move to one or the other, they're gonna feel like rather than a true merger, it's an acquisition.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, but it takes some time to go find a piece of property and build a new facility and but maybe with the concept that temporarily they would move into one or the other of the facilities, sell the other one, when the new
Yeah.
property's finished, you move in there, and a new property would be built to accommodate what you would anticipate to be the new
Right.
membership.
Yeah.
I believe the Presbyterian Foundation has some resources around that. My church has been in conversation with them around Project Regeneration and renewing congregations and that sort of work. And some of what they talked about, especially around an influx of financial assets, as they help churches navigate those changes and where to put those funds and how to do some of like the legal legwork around it so that it's not like a volunteer group of people trying to figure out what the hell to do, because most of us don't know what the hell to do.
Yeah.
But the foundation has some good resources around that
Is
from
that,
my conversations with them.
is that what Shawnee used, Elizabeth, with their money after they sold their building?
Yep.
They used the,
Before my time.
okay. I didn't, well, I thought
And,
maybe heard talk of it.
Covenant in Oklahoma City is using Project Regeneration too. I don't know, it's a good question. The question always comes down, and I don't have enough history with this presbytery of who owns the property, whether it's the presbytery or the congregation, and that historically becomes a question of northern church and southern church, and I don't know. It would just take looking into the records to find out who owns the deed.
It's kind of interesting, because several months ago when I first went there, I mean, if I had to assign a value to the chances of these two entities coming together, I would have given it 5 or 10%. But after a few months of ice cream socials, getting together for Thanksgiving, getting together for Christmas celebrations, today I think I can give that a 25 to 35% chance.
That's a
Because
market
I just get
improvement.
a sense that both of them are really beginning to realize we don't have much time. I think First Pres' time frame is shorter because we do have some cash at Westminster. With our current negative cash flow, we can last 24 to 48 months without a major air conditioning system going out or some unforeseen
Wow.
event. So
Knock on wood.
I kind of sense, and I know that's going to be one of the issues, can we keep the funds, if you will? If we might go forward.
And
Well-
that becomes, excuse me,
Oh, go ahead.
that becomes a case really of very delicately the presbytery helping them through this process as opposed to the perception that the presbytery is trying to drive the process.
Exactly.
We don't want to try to force them
No,
into
no, no,
anything.
no, because I was cautioned early on, don't push it, let it kind of happen. And that's what we've been doing, but it's just, it's kind of beginning to see a little smoke now. No fire, little smoke.
I'm encouraged by
Yeah.
that. I interrupted you.
Which is positive.
Yeah. As long as they don't have the idea they're gonna divide it up.
No,
and-
no, 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 no.
But, yeah, I would think as long as they're working towards ministry in a geographic area, that they're gonna need the money for that. And that's kind of what I alluded to with Shawnee. They took the sale of their property, invested in this new property, and then they have funds to operate. I don't think any of that money went to the presbytery at all, so.
That would have been huge dollars difference compared to what, because Shawnee they got a pretty buy out on a big church.
Mm-hmm.
And what they were buying was maybe 15 cents on the dollar.
Yeah,
It was
they
50 at the
downsized,
time.
yeah. But they've done a beautiful job of renovating and using those funds to, yeah, exactly. So, well, I guess, Galen, one thing to say to them would be, what would be helpful to you? Make suggestions to Presbytery. So kind of give them that feel that we're in it together.
And we have suggested Project Regeneration in the foundation. I think both churches within the past year, when the suggestion was made, were fairly frosty about it. I don't know if there's more interest now that reality is setting in more. But they were less than interested about a year ago when we suggested it.
And when I first went there, I think that was still the case, less interested. But when First Pres came to our group and said, we're inviting you to come to a joint Thanksgiving service, I mean, our people were, I think, stunned. And then we turned right around and invited them to Christmas Eve, and they accepted the next morning. So in just little comments, you just get a sense that the furnace is not on, but there's a pilot light burning.
It sounds like they're in the early stages of dating.
That's an answer,
Like,
that's an answer to prayer.
Oh, that was great.
It's an answer to prayer, I can tell you.
Did you say the heat's not on, but the pilot light's lit?
Yeah.
I love that. I eat that up with a spoon. I'm gonna borrow that one from you. That's a winner.
Kinda like there's a difference between going to church and going to worship.
Yeah, yeah.
I do think they should expect, though, to need approval for any selling.
Oh, indeed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. But we can't say, oh, well, if you're just merging, yeah, do whatever you want.
No, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I have to tell you all, it's interesting, the last few months, I can sense their attitude toward the presbytery has improved appreciably. There was some pushback when I first got there, but I can sense that, that attitude has changed, which is quite positive.
I think the fact that neither of them have a pastor now also helps a great deal.
Mm,
And I think
yeah.
like when you came to Lawton for that joint meeting, that was very, very well received.
Good.
Very well received.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
And, yeah.
And thank you for your good work, Gail.
Mhm.
Clearly.
Well, I'm sorry it's only 1:45, but
Mm.
I don't have any other thing to talk about.
I have an announcement.
Yes,
The Presbyterian Task Force, which has people from all 3 presbyteries in Oklahoma, has started a Bible study on Wednesday mornings. Are any of you aware of it yet? Okay. And it's an hour long, starts at 9 o'clock. And you will be able to find it on the Presbytery website and the Presbytery Facebook page.
And we'll be sending out emails.
Yes.
Okay.
Wednesday morning.
That's on Wednesday mornings, it's a Bible
It is by
study.
Zoom.
By Zoom.
and what are they studying?
Right now, we've only had one,
Mhm.
we're not doing the second one, and we have just chosen our own topic.
Oh, okay,
My topic is hope, and I'm working on it.
all right,
What day is today, Saturday?
yeah.
That's a good
Yeah,
time.
I'll see you Wednesday morning.
Yeah,
You're working on the lesson or you're working on it?
that sounds good. Well, our next
Thank you.
meeting is, any other announcements for the good of the group?
Move adjourned.
All right, our next meeting will be February 4th, and that'll be our usual hybrid. And thank you again for your time here. We have a motion and a second. Anybody object to adjourning? No?
Janet, you started a lot today, job well done.
Well, I hope your minds aren't blown, but.
Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,